on 98 FM and online. This is Phoenix FM.
Yes, I'm not sure if that officially means we're in the second hour, but yeah, I'm here until midnight. And yes, joined now by Chris Liberators that come up from London. Hello there.
Hello, Graham.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me tonight.
No, my
good
pleasure.
To see you. It was good to see you those few months ago at actually I spoke about Crucifix Lane. It used to be called Jack's Club.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple of parties. There was the Wall things there before Christmas, and now this weekend Trouble Village. But yeah, I saw you there for the.
Yeah, it was very nice that you asked me to come on. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally,
no travels, but because I was looking forward to speaking to you because you've been very influential, and actually acid techno itself has been in my party background and raving history, and it's a bit of a foundation. And so, be looking forward to talking to you and sort of looking forward to kind of hearing your background and how you first got into music and found this sort of style of music that you got into.
Well, basically, I was a punk. That was the thing. I was very, very young, and I'm an oldie, very old as well, ancient, in fact. But when I was growing up in the 70s, I first got into music, and it was just stuff like Pink Floyd, things like that. When I was about 8 or 9, literally from kind of pop music, which obviously everyone sort of listens to, and then it was discover more deeper, interesting things, and it was the end of the sort of 70s, and just got on the cusp of the progressive rock thing, and the heavy rock thing, and suddenly discovered there was a world of music outside of like just what you heard on the radio, which quickly changed because then punk came along and said all those bands were crap and you shouldn't listen to them and this is the new thing. And of course I was like 11 or 10 and just completely overwhelmed. It just blew my mind. I was just like, wow, bands like the Pistols and the Stranglers and stuff like this. I was too young to go and see them live. I was still really young, but the politics and the message and the anger and Britain at that time was a really depressing place, really kind of like, well, as all the way through the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s into the Thatcher era, it was nuclear war on the horizon. Everyone was quite angry and depressed about the future, it looked pretty bad. So punk was the antidote to that and got me through all my school days. Every day I'd go to school, listen to punk before I went and thought, this system is going to go, Yeah, and that was the thing. So not a techno background at all. But from that, new wave, like the new sort of sounding bands came from punk, and the music moved on. Interestingly, into electronica and stuff like Cabaret Voltaire, the Normal, Mute Records, stuff like this. There was very much a DIY culture which came out of punk, and that again was a massive influence on me because by the time I was able to go to gigs in the early 80s and start playing in bands, I was playing in bands anyway, but was able to play out and do proper gigs. It had changed, and there was a lot of different music out there which had been inspired by punk. But early electronic stuff and old electronic stuff was coming back into fashion, like Can and people like Kraftwerk as well were very, very big during that time as well, before the rave scene started. Bands like Front 242 later on in the 80s became really kind of not a big influence on me, but a big influence on the fact that techno was brewing away in the background. And electronica became a part of my musical spectrum. But of course, when after the punk thing happened and I went through all that, I had a spate of playing in an indie band for a while, bit disillusioned with all music, and then that was when electronic music really hit home with the rave scene.
So it sounds like a bit of an exciting time, and it was good you were open to all these different perspectives and styles that were coming up. Because I was a bit younger, but my vision of the 80s was the kind of, again, the pop music until I got into metal in the late 80s. But and I kind of missed that first rave scene, but then obviously you were able to catch it.
Well, funnily enough for me, it was a bit like you, because a lot of people I know, a lot of acid techno people really like metal as well. There seems to be this thing between punk and metal influencing a lot of people that came through into acid techno and into techno as well. But of course, if you're into that kind of music, when house music first happened, I remember in 1988 hearing house music for the first time and going, I don't really like this. This is really, boring and very slow and not at all kind of. It's not it didn't need to be aggressive, but it had to have some attitude to it. It didn't have any attitude, It sounded like radio music still to me. Of course, later on, I started to appreciate it more. But at that time, it wasn't hard enough. It wasn't, it wasn't dark enough, and it wasn't, aggressive enough. Yeah. Not aggressive, but politically aggressive or anything. It sounded like the status quo music, not the status quo. But, course, Acid House, I heard a bit of that, and that sounded better, and I liked it. And I remember going to a Mutoid Waves party, Acid House party, the first one I ever went to, I think, in '89 maybe, and getting into it because it was a very druggy event, which appealed to me because, you know, and lots of more people from my scene were there, so it felt a bit more like a party that I could be at,
Yeah.
You know, from the punk and squat scene, you know. But it still didn't hit me. The music didn't hit me till, like, you know, sort of late '89, early '90, when it started to get harder, and you had the really sort of the first Belgian techno, which came from the, you know, Front 242 kind of thing, mixed with house music and the drugs, of course. Like the ecstasy revolution was really in full swing by then, and it just compounded to make this new style of music, which was techno.
Yeah.
Obviously in Detroit, they've been making, like Kevin Saunders and people like that have been making techno. Derek May. Again, it was quite housey sort of sound. It wasn't till the early Underground Resistance records, which are like blueprint acid techno records in some respects, you know, harder acid thing, reflect more the city of Detroit, I think, in its kind of decline, you know, which is very much what the London thing was about, you know, the squat parties, like, you know, and acid music was really, you know, born out of those urban spaces, you know, and a very punk kind of attitude that went with it. And of course, the harder Detroit and the harder Belgian techno, that was the beginning of for me, the music I really liked, and coupled with the rave thing. You know, I was massively into the rave thing and going out and taking it easy every week and doing all that. But it took a little bit, you know, the harder music to make that happen, and also that punk attitude, you know, to combine with it. I think on our scene, it was all punks, you know, squatters, hippies, people that didn't really kind of like live within the ideal rave.
Yeah, or in the mainstream, but as I say, in the kind of because to a certain degree, that first rave scene, had its own style and was a thing on its own, and as you say, these people were kind of outside it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you look at the Danny Rampling sort of version of events, you know, of the kind of like what happened with the M25 raves and stuff like that, it was a very, you know, grassroots scene, but it came from clubbier people, you know, and obviously that combined with the punk theme created the sort of stuff that we know now from the Free Party scene, which was the Spiral Tribe kind of ethic, you know, with Bedlam and people like that. Liberator, obviously, part of that, and Zero Gravity and a lot of Urge were another crew that we used to go to their raves, the first urban sort of rave, Shrape. Bedlam, we played with loads, and we went to their parties before we knew them, and it was all a big sort of thing brewing in the city of London and outside of it in the countryside, where the sort of post raves started to happen, where this whole scene of punks and travellers, the traveller thing, we were in connecting with a lot of the traveller sort of things, and that created that whole traveller thing as well.
Because they had parties and sound systems, didn't they? And they had a lot of dub as well happening.
Well, the punk thing, I mean, from things like Crass and Here and Now and all the kind of early punk festival kind of bands that did a lot of crossover stuff with the traveller sort of scene. And also urban things like you know, I used to go to Meanwhile Gardens and see bands. Well, I played in bands with Meanwhile Gardens. You know, I was in punk scene with what we call a hippie punk scene with the Mob and people like this, and that was very much Stonehenge kind of. You know, everyone would play at Stonehenge, everyone would go to Stonehenge. It was all tied in with the hippie traveller thing. Yeah, and Hawkwind Here and Now kind of influence on it. Again, influence in the side charts as well. I think later on that sort of sound, psychedelic rock. You know. Yeah. That was all tied in with the punk. It sounds like a weird combination, but it's really just the outside of the mainstream. Traveller, punk, squatters. The whole thing was generated by people that didn't fit in. Yeah. And yeah, of course, the music changed, and the harder music led to this kind of, you know, outsider sort of people latching onto it. And so the second generation of raves, really, which was like the 91 kind of sort of urban squat raves, and coupled with the traveller sort of thing, and the festivals. I mean, we were going to these festivals, and they were festivals, hippie festivals, and they turned into raves, you know. Yeah. Chipping Sodbury, like things like this became like, you know, Lechlade, Castle Morton festivals were based on hippie festivals, and the travellers where they were going, and they, you know, it all combined with the sound systems. Not all the travellers really liked the rave thing coming in, but it just took over straight away and created a new subculture. Culture.
Wonderful. So what was your... How did you get into it from the music perspective? When did you start producing or actually playing or mixing the music?
Well, when I came out of the band that I was in, I mean, I've done all the punk thing. I've been in a band called Hagar the Womb and another band called Cold War. We've done the whole Scott thing and done a lot of stuff. And funnily enough, Hagar the Womb are playing again now. With a lot of those bands from that time, we've been gigging again, and which has been quite funny. But that that whole thing, kind of the punk thing in the early 80s that we were involved in, the anarcho scene, was very much an anarchist punk kind of thing, based around squats and stuff like that. That all kind of fizzled out in the mid 80s and late 80s, and found myself kind of like really being a musical person, wanting to carry on doing music. And so I got more into kind of an indie sort of stuff, really. When I say indie, I don't mean the kind of stuff now that we call indie, but, you know, it was a post-punk sort of indie
You
thing.
mean like Stone Roses, or was it not that?
Well, Stone Roses were around when we were playing in my band, which was called We're Gonna Eat You. We ended up being like playing more like kind of somewhere between All About Eve and the Primitives, something like that, but a little bit more punky edge to it. And we did.
But like the Americans band, like the Pixies, that kind of thing.
It was all, tied in with that kind of sound. I mean, we were definitely more commercial. I mean, it was the only time I've ever sort of broken out of being a very underground DIY kind of thing.
Yeah.
We came out of the punk scene. We were, you know, our label was based at Crassie's headquarters, and we were managed by one of the punk sort of forefathers from UKDK. So we definitely came from that side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, we was in his band, and of course we stepped into the commercial zone and then got enticed by it, and kind of had a record deal, got an American record deal, and then still recording at Southern Studios, which is the home of Crass, you know, so it's quite weird to have this dichotomy. But we did all that. Of course, got sucked into the kind of, we might get a deal, blah, blah, blah. Went against everything I really ever believed in. Got caught up in it, and of course it was a total, you know, nightmare. We got a lot of press. We got all kind of hyped up, and then got into big label arguments with the labels, and that was it, really. We released an album in the States eventually, which was 2 years on ice, and all the hype about the band went. And, and we just, you know, I was just really, really, it was a bad time for me, and that's when electronic music, I've been listening to more and more of it, and that's when it kind of, I'm never going back into trying to do anything commercial again. I'm gonna go, and the rave scene saved me, and I met Julian and Aaron, who were like squatting near where I lived. Julian was the cousin of the singer of our band, who was my partner at the time. Yeah. And he came over one day, and he was a squatter, and I was like, look, I'm really into this rave music, I really like it, but no, I don't know anyone else that likes it apart from me. You know, I've come from this band thing, all my mates are punks or ex-punks or in bands, you know, this is just an alien thing to me. I go to a rave, it just seems to be people all nicely dressed up that don't look like me, like crusty sort of squat look. And he's like, I really like all that stuff as well. Come over to my house. And I went over to his squat, started playing around with the records that we bought, that, you know, I've been making tapes of people. And he was like, yeah, I've got this, and what records you got? And carried on doing tapes for people and stuff. And one day Aaron, who lived in a squat up the road, heard about these DJs. We weren't DJs, in inverted commas. We were just people who bought records and liked the music. He came over, he had decks, hooked up with us, and that's how the Liberator thing was born. And that's how it just went from there, really. We've been going to all these, we knew quite a lot of other squat ravers during that period, got to know more people. Old punks that I knew were doing squat parties and doing bands, and then doing techno as well. Yeah. Into the same kind of techno that we were. We just hunted out all these people within our scene. We knew a lot of travellers and other people, and it just went off. I mean, the whole Spiral Tribe thing was happening concurrently with that. It was a very exciting time for the whole scene. And slowly, you know, it just, well, not slowly, actually, really quickly, it built up into this thing. We were doing parties. There was other people we knew doing parties. There was Zero Gravity, and there was people like Megadog doing their stuff. And then there was Spiral Tribe, Bedlam, Conspiracy, all these different sound systems, Armageddon. Yeah. We got to know a lot of these very rapidly, got playing, you know, all these different people. But we had our own style. What we really liked musically sort of started to evolve at that point as well. And this whole sort of Liberator style, which became acid techno, was our thing, really. A lot. Spirals got really hard. They liked Gabba and playing really hard stuff, and Zero Gravity and like kind of really funky sort of stuff. And there was people like DIY, and it's like house music, you know.
Yeah. One of the essentials, when I first started raving, like late 90s, one of the essentials was acid techno, and that was just a small one. It's Italian guys, Checkpoint.
Right, yeah, I remember them.
Ivan
and So, well, that was it. I mean, it was just, that was later. I mean, this was really early 90s when all this was going on.
You were the cutting edge of the formation of it, because every time I've joined the scene, it was already up and running. But I can't imagine what it was like.
The funny thing is, though, like, it had its kind of like heyday of that Spiral thing, but then the Criminal Justice Bill came in. We did the Castle Morton party. A lot of people got prosecuted at that party. People we were involved in. We hooked up with a load of travellers called Conspiracy. They had a truck and a trailer. We provided the rest of it, kind of thing. But we didn't have a sound system. We were going to club together and buy a sound system and go on the road. And we had backdrops. We had, like, obviously all the DJs. And we had loads of other stuff, equipment and things that we brought with us, some lights and stuff. But we did the Castle Morton Festival with them. They had the trailer and everything else. Bedlam, we met a few times, but we hadn't done anything with them. And at Lechlade, I think it was Lechlade Festival actually, before Castlemore, which was the other big festival, we'd got involved with kind of knowing this festival was coming up, we're going to be there, and we finally hooked up with Bedlam there. They didn't have anything except a sound system. They wanted a trailer. They didn't have decks. They had decks, but they had nowhere to put them. It was all like, they didn't have any banners, backdrops, anything else. And virtually, they had a few DJs, but they were kind of Spiral Tribe DJs that kind of moonlighted on Bedlam's rig. So, and a couple of others that were dedicated to them, people like Aztec and stuff. And so we all played together at that party. Conspiracy combined with Liberator and Bedlam, and that was the beginning of our sort of time with Bedlam, and we did a lot of stuff with them amongst other people. But that was an era, and then that Castle Morton party, kind of after that criminal justice bill came in. So that couple of years of all that time, we were doing Scott parties every week, Bedlam, Spiral Tribe.
And so there was no problem with the police at that time, or you just...
There was. I mean, I remember doing a bucket on the door at Bedlam party, and like police coming up and going, "Oh, we're coming into bus party because you can't come in, we're not going to do anything unless you turn up in forces." We will be turning up in forces. I turned up about 10 minutes later, like 20 police vans all come in, and there was also one Spiral party that I was at. I wasn't playing at that, and I went to it, and I left in the afternoon. The police bulldozed into the building, and killed somebody. So I think, from what I remember, there was stuff like that going on. There was definitely, but then you'd have other parties where they just leave you alone. It's pretty much the same as it is now in a lot of ways, But we did a lot of our own little parties as well. We were doing a lot of eviction parties, smaller house parties, and a couple of small warehouse parties as Liberator, and doing a few pay parties. And so it was a time of playing for Megadog as well, and other people, Zero Gravity. So we had a really kind of good, it was a very fluid time, but it was an era, and that era really finished when Spiral Tribe decided to leave England and go to France because of the criminal justice bill.
Oh, right.
And about that time, Bedlam decided to go as well. We went over and did a couple of technivals, but it wasn't really for us. We decided that things were going well with London. We started the label then. We had our sound as well, which wasn't really it was different to the Spiral thing. It had already developed into a different sound, this acid sort of sound that we liked. Yeah. And that was really when the London thing became really a new thing. It became an acid techno scene built around like sound systems like Immersion, who we met, like Laurie, Gibber, who played different music as well, Virus as well. There was all these sound systems that suddenly appeared after that first wave. So this is like the second wave, And that was very, very much a time for the acid scene. There was a lot of rigs playing other music, but it really became massive, the acid techno thing, during that next period. So when you actually said at that time, at the end of the 90s, that was the heyday. There's also like new rigs coming all from that time, Manic and Underground Sound, another very influential thing. But it was a real golden age for acid techno, because that was the music had developed. We met a lot of other producers, David Drummer, Geezer. We formulated the label. We had other labels running. We had all these different people working with us: Immersion, Laurie, and Giselle, and several other people. And it was a very exciting time. There was lots of parties every week, a massive acid techno party, and a consecutive series of rigs just that came and went. They did their 2 or 3 years stint, really got into it, and then another one would appear, or another two, and they'd get into it, and they'd have their little thing going on, down to really tiny little rigs that would just go out and do stuff. It was a very positive time,
Yeah, exactly. So those checkpoint ones I was mentioned, they were like just in a squatted pub in Hackney.
Yeah,
the pub's like a small, simple sound system, and not many people, but a nice vibe and nice big, fat sounding music, which got you rocking. It really kind of, and you get that in. That's what I kind of like about psytrance as well, because you can get that big sort of, especially with the big drums and everything. Yeah.
Well, I think even then the psytrance and the acid techno were kind of like, I remember buying some of the early like psytrance records. They were very, very light acid techno, and there was a lot of like you had Chocky's Tunes as well. We were doing a lot of work with him, and
like Flying Rhino and stuff was around that stuff.
Well, that's it. They were doing vinyl as well back then. It was like I bought a couple of those records and played them. Early. What's the really massive label that? Oh God, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, there was records that I bought that we played and we were quite into, but it rapidly changed and it became its own thing. But there was a lot of crossover. I mean, another sound system I should mention, who's really like were big friends of ours and did a lot of stuff, was Full On, and Dave DDR, who was one of the artists that we started with, basically working with us, and he's still with us, working with us now. He's a great producer and does stuff. But funnily enough, it ties in because the Stubnitz boat is over at the moment. I don't know if you know about this. It's docked in on the river in the East End, or called Docklands really. And we've been doing some party. We did a party on there. Spiral Tribe did a party, and that's been based in Rostock. And the guy from Full On, he was one of the sound systems around the time of Bedlam and stuff. He's been running this boat, Koost his name is, and I've been doing the boat, and it's been moored in Rostock, and been running it as an art project and stuff. But I just want to give it a little plug, because there's a lot of good parties on there. So if you can find out about it, it's called the Stubnitz.
Okay. And
it's docked at the moment. We did Julian did a Liberator party there on, Julian Liberator party on in November, and there's been Spiral Tribe parties and a few other things there. So if you see any, it's an amazing venue. So if just a little plug for that. But a very old person from the scene that we know and love.
And so how can people find it? Is it like on a website?
Yeah, I mean, if you look up Stubnitz, just put it in, you'll see it comes up as a party venue. And the boat is really amazing, and they need money. They need people to go there and go on it, because they got stuck here. They came over for Block, and the festival got cancelled, and cost them 20 grand in diesel to get here. So, so a little bit screwed at the moment.
Yeah.
But worth checking out the boat.
Yeah, shall we dive into a song? It's a new one you wanted to share. Is this a new? I think we could have a bit of a sample of it, just to give people an impression.
Yeah, I think this is Scum Like Us Like Acid, I believe, which is a new track from me and Sterling Moss, who's working very, very closely with last few years. Very good friend of ours and part of his own scene, really, but he knew us from back in the day as well. And he's been working with Stay It Forever now, which is our label.
Okay.
Now on its 100th release, and celebrating over a year, or even probably 2 years, the way things are going. Like just this whole 100 release thing, we're doing a series of releases, probably 5 or 6 vinyl releases, staggered over time. And so James is working with us now, Sterling Moss, and this is a production I've done with him recently, coming out on a label called Corrosive, and called Scum Like Us Like Acid. I think that sums up the party scene.
Let's check it out for a bit.
Across Brentwood and Billericay, this is Phoenix FM.
So yes, that's Scum Like Us.
Yeah, Scum Like Us Like Acid.
So I was going to speak to you about collaborations, because you mentioned Sterling Moss, which is a fantastic name, by the way.
Yeah, based on the racing driver. He was a bit of a hero, James. His real name is James. So,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've always done lots of collaborations. I mean, I don't actually have a studio anymore at the moment, so it's nice to go and make music with other people.
Yeah.
Go to their studio, do stuff. We've got a whole range of artists that are making now all branched out to doing their own stuff, and it's kind of fun doing things. We do lots of collaborations with, always have done right from the beginning. Obviously everyone makes music on their own as well, and it's all pretty good. But there's loads of different pseudonyms and names out there. I think the acid techno community have made so many records under different names, and people really, it's a proper Discogs hobby if you want to find out who's made what, and people are always kind of going, who made what band was this, what was that called? I'm sure the same in the psytrance scene as well. There's a lot of kind of different collaborations with people, but they tend to work more as bands, don't they, in the psytrance scene?
Well, not so much. They have a case like Infected Mushroom now. They're kind of they bring in instruments. But,
didn't mean as bands, but as collaborations.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I'm looking at I used to look at the old psytrance stuff. There was always 2 or 3 people often working as a unit.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes more fun, really.
Exactly, and then you can bounce ideas off each other and stuff, and it's just fantastic.
Avast virus database has been updated.
So when did you do the transition from DJing into actually producing and finding out how to do it?
Well, I've always made music. It's been like, you know, so it wasn't. We had some stuff left over from the band. We had a sampler that we bought, and we'd never made like electronic music with it, but we just we had a computer and a sampler and a couple of other bits, so we could make rudimentary electronic music with that, which is how we started making the first records for Stay Forever. But we were musicians, so we were like, we're into making music. That's what we did. So when we started getting into electronic music, my first inclination, and Paul Harding, who was also in my band, who started Stay Forever with me and Aaron and Julian, he was like, instrumental in helping us, because he was like, I had the equipment with him, so we were like, let's make some electronic music. And Julian, Aaron, and me, we just worked with Paul, and we started out like that. And then, it was pretty fast, really. I'd worked with a couple other people. There's some people from Urge that I knew, done a couple of tracks with them. But it was just like, that creative time was really, it was just, right, we've got to make electronic music. We'll get into doing it. We started making it ourselves, but then we soon met other people as well that, there's a label called Bag Records, which was linked with Megadog, and they wanted us to make a record, and I went to do that record in another studio, and that's how I met David Drummer, who was in a band that I knew as well. I didn't know them, but I've been to see him, called Back to the Planet, and he was kind of where we were at 3 or 4 years later down the line. He'd been in his band. I remember his band played at Castle Morton. When we were playing techno, he was playing with the band, but another band who've reformed and are playing again. So, we met David Drummer, and then through David Drummer I met Geezer, Guy McAfee, and there's DDR we knew pretty much because they were squatting down the road from us, and he was part of Full On, and he was a musician. So we started making all these different things. There was Chocky's Tunes, who we bought records from. He had a label. He invited us to come and make a record. We made our first Liberator record for him before we'd even, really started with Stay Up Forever. So we did a couple of Liberator records on Chocky's Tunes. I did a record on Bag. I met all these other people. It just started to flow. The whole thing was just like, it's quite difficult to find people to make music with at first, but once it got going, it was, there's a lot of studios and a lot of action going on.
A lot of enthusiasm as well, which helps.
Massively, So
people want to be doing stuff all the time.
Yeah, so the label came out. It was a bit rudimentary, our first efforts on it. But, Stay Up Forever was, we were committed to it, and we decided we wanted to put labels out from the squat scene. Artists out from the squat scene. Started to find a few different people and put them on the record label, including Dave and Koost from the Stubnits. We did the second record with them. Julian and Aaron and myself and Paul, we were making tracks too. So it was a combination of stuff. We did another record with some of the guys from Urge. But the sound hadn't really developed. We also found these guys from Leeds we really liked, called DOM. We put a record out by them, but it was by about 6 or 7 on Stay Up Forever that Chocky did a record. We were making records with him as well. So it was all a bit sort of like people that we knew, putting out artists, but it was sort of from 7 or 8 onwards, it started to really define itself as a acid techno label properly. Like, we really nailed the sound of what we wanted to do. I think number 9, for example, is really, there's a track on that which was like really, I remember going to all the squat parties and everybody was playing it. It just seemed to hit the zeitgeist of that at the time,
Perfect.
And it just went from there, and we just pursued it more. And then we met David Drummer around the time number 10 or 11, Geezer around 13 or 14. It just started sort of, they came into the fold. We started working with them, doing a lot of stuff at their studios as well, and they had a really good sound. David Drummer, particularly at that time, was like really keen to get involved. Yeah. He's a musical genius anyway, and he just came in and like was really like, I really love this sound you got a lot of playing. He came to raves, just completely lost himself in it, and went from there, and yes, before long we had like our Laurie Immersion, of course. I remember we did a party with Laurie, and we'd heard about him and his rig. He turned up and did the rig at one of the parties we did, Planet Avenue, or one of these, I think it was one we did with Misbehaviour or someone, but he did the rig and started chatting to him. He said, I'm working on a record, and I'd really like you to come down and do some music with me. So I went down to his studio and we got really wasted and made these tracks. And he said, I'm going to give them to this guy called Steve. I don't know if you know him, Hackney sort of squatter type. Met him. That was Steve, who started Smitten Records, and that was another label from the crew. And of course, me and Laurie did some more work together, made all these tracks, which eventually became London Acid City, which was the first Route Master. and he started his label. So it was just suddenly, it wasn't just Stay It Forever. It was like a little group of acid labels, all kind of really finding our feet now with and becoming a little bit of a force to be reckoned with, because there was quite a lot of us making the stuff. We were doing the parties every single week, squat parties, and DJing as well in other places. And our names as DJ wise have been getting bigger, and we're doing more stuff. But
you really
very
helping
exciting.
each other as well. So like kind of this collaboration really makes you stronger, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still really good friends. Everybody's really good friends, which is I think the backbone of it all. We've always really, I mean, me and Aaron sort of, we're like old, sort of old geezers sometimes arguing, going, whoa, but I mean, generally, like, well, 99% of all the people in our scene, all the new guys as well, I hope feel the same way, that they're supported by us. It's not a scene with a lot of money in it, and it's not a scene where, you're going to be a massive megastar. It's not about that. It's about, the time that we spend together and being a part of a scene,
and
the whole
keeping it
squat
going.
Scene. Yeah, and the whole squat scene is a group of people that really love the music, but also a group of people that feel like they're outsiders and have a unity together. I go to the squat party, it doesn't matter what rig it is. It's a real sense of we're all part of something, and it's the anti, if you like, it's the anti-establishment thing, and it's expressed through music, and it's expressed through a lot of different things. But it doesn't matter what, like in Barcelona with Acid Core this weekend, they're all punks, they're all the same kind of people. It's the collaborations and the thing, and the friendship is the backbone of it. We're all really good friends, and the more people that get involved in the scene, it's not often we have big riffs with people, and I don't think that's true of other scenes. I talked to like Jamie Taylor, for example, another great artist who's working with us now. He came from the hard house scene, and he's always saying, it's a great scene, some good music came out of it, but no one really supported each other so much. I'm sure that there is pockets of people that did, but he said it's not like your scene. Your scene seems to be really, everyone's friends with each other. There's no egos over dominating anyone else. There's a lot of different musical progression. Everybody's moved a long way in their own fields. David Drummer's doing a lot more techno stuff now, and there's like, and we're all moving around in, doing punk things and all sorts of stuff, but we're all still really good friends and all support each other. And I count every single one of the collective as a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I hope they feel the same way about everybody else that they know. Of course, there's the odd rift. But, but it's a good, solid.
And so you enjoy the label side of it as well. So all that different, all these different artists' music going through it and distributing it as well.
Well, we've had like lots of changes in the music format. Obviously, like in the last 5 years, records have kind of not disappeared because we're still making records. I mean, I'm a total vinyl head. I'd never stop playing records if I can help it. But obviously, you had the whole CD thing, and from that, CDJs and DJs playing CDs, and then of course now it's like MP3s and people using all sorts of different methods to DJ. With the release of music, obviously we got, we've had a really difficult time because we still want to produce vinyl, but it's very expensive to make it.
Yeah, I mean, is that sustainable, do you find, or is it you struggle?
It's almost. I mean, we're Stay It Forever. In all honesty, like Stay It Forever is really broke right now. With we don't have a lot of money because what happens when you make records is we had a collective of labels, nearly 20 labels, which we were basically manufacturing. But what happens is you make the records, you pay the artist and do the rest of it after you get the money back in. But there's a point where you give all those records to someone to distribute.
Yeah.
They don't put any money into it, and they distribute the records and give you the money after 3 months. So basically you pay for the records, they distribute them. When they go out of business, which happened like a load of dominoes falling down, you get left basically without any, you don't get paid. So, but you've put the money in. So we've had this happen several times over the last 15 years where we've kind of built up some money. It all seems to be going all right. We spend it all and our distributor goes bust and owes us, we have to start again from scratch.
Yeah.
This has happened continuously up to the present day, and it's come to the point where we can't build any money back from it anymore because there's no distribution left to sell the records now. Even if, we can sell them on our website and make a fraction of money, but we can't, we make 300 records now. It takes a couple of years to sell them because we can't really risk giving them to any of the distributors that are left. There's a couple we work with, but you can't make any money on 300 records, and we're flat broke, to be honest with you. But
at least on the internet, if you sell them through there, you can, there are ways you can promote and market the site. But
yeah, I mean, we've got stayitforever.com is where you can buy it. We still release records and we still do it, and we've got help from one distributor who's in Holland. And there's other people like, Jack Wax in Holland who's releasing records. There's, other labels like, that we're helping or do distribution for, and help out, like, FBR. I won't say the full name because we've been told off for swearing once, but they've just, started. There's a lot of ADSR, there's a lot of new labels and there's a lot of sort of things happening. And believe it or not, everybody's still committed to vinyl.
Yeah.
Most of the artists want to be on vinyl. Most of the the old school DJs want vinyl. Of course, the new kids are all playing MP3 as well, but we want to keep releasing vinyl if we can. By hook or by crook, we'll do it.
Because we were talking about that because vinyl and analog is kind of the natural way almost, because it's infinite, and it's how we hear and it's how speakers are analog. So it's
I mean, if you're older like us, you grew up with it in an analog age, and I think you appreciate the difference in the sound.
Yeah.
The sound of analog is a lot better than the sound of digital, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But obviously, bandwidth-wise, if you actually look at it, digital music is very brash sounding because it's bit music. It's been changed into digital sounds and then reproduced back into sound.
Yeah.
Analog is a different method of listening to it, but it's much warmer. And I mean, everyone always says this about records and stuff, and it is true. But I think kids now, a lot of them have been grown up with MP3 sounding like that's the normal sound,
Yeah.
So, but of course, there's a benefit to it as well. I mean, we've got like a site called 909london.com, which is where we now kind of represent all the newer artists. And before, it was quite expensive to put out records, and we couldn't always put all the music out. Now, with this, we've got a lot of newer artists that maybe just need a break to get some of their first tunes out, and some of them are becoming really fantastic, and some of them are really well established, like AP from Wales, who's a fantastic producer, and Zoid. There's people like Tacid and Jamie Taylor, and a lot of new artists that are, Obi-Wan and Austin Crosby. There's a lot of different people now really coming through that are really good producers, but they just needed a bit of almost like a little help up the ladder. And we've always had that because we put a record out, but it may not be brilliant, but once you've had a couple of releases, you start getting better at your production. And these guys have got the MP3 format to do that. And 909london.com, you can find all the new producers alongside all the old, because we can do the MP3s and we can take a risk with those producers. We can release something and go, okay, it might not be great, but I think some people will like it. And, if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to buy it, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to put it out. And those producers are getting used to releases and getting their sound better. And we don't put out any old rubbish, it's all pretty much, we try our best to keep the quality high.
So you're encouraging them as well.
But some of the newer ones don't sound, obviously, the production techniques are not quite as good.
Yeah.
But it gives them a foot up the ladder, and of course, those artists are becoming established and really well, sort of high in their own fields now. Like, I've got a track from Tacit lined up to play, which is on his own label, Scucks, which which is one of the newer producers, and he used to come to our parties down in the South Coast. Fantastic, like to see that he is now a really good producer in his own right.
So he's inspired by it, and now he wants to do it himself, which is great. You see that. Fortunately, you see that in the psytrance scene as well. People are enjoy the parties, and then they start mixing, and then producing. It's like this wonderful sort of flow of the creativity and the evolution as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you say with psytrance, we were talking about that have always been a bit more digital based. I'm not pro-digital as such because I'm still real. I love playing records, and I'll never stop feeling. I mean, my art as a DJ is about vinyl for me. That's what it's about. And other DJs that I know that really love playing, that most of them will say they still prefer to play vinyl. But of course, you've got to move on. It's easier to play Tractor or something else. Now because you can just get a wealth of tunes. But the MP3 thing has made it easier, I think, for newer artists to get their music out, and that is a benefit. So that's good. Good for the scene, good for everybody.
Absolutely. So should we play the song by Tacit?
Yep.
Fantastic. Which one did you want to play? Which track? I
think it's called What I Can't, but I can't remember.
Okay. What
I can't remember. But if it isn't the right one, then it's about I think it's number 4 on the CD. So let's hope it is him, not something else. There's loads of other tracks on it.
Wonderful. fantastic. That's Tacit. That's a nice. That was really big. Yeah, that kind of. It really takes me. Yeah, takes me to those moments. Yeah. Really nice.
Yeah. So
really enjoy it. So the parties are still happening still, and there's a big vibe with them.
Yeah, I mean the squat parties at New Year. I mean, you were saying like there's a psytrance thing. I think the one party got busted, the Shindig thing.
That's right.
A friend of mine, Scott Dom, another artist from the crew, has been out and about doing stuff for a while, but he was in the middle of his life and got 200 police to deal with all of a sudden when he looked up, which wasn't good. But there's the E1S Stinky Pink Freebase party, which was like the big techno one. That was just immense. I think it had 3,500 people. So yeah, there's still techno ravers out there.
Yeah,
want
so you still want it.
And it was really good. I could only pop in and play briefly because I was actually, we played in the band as well, Dogshite, which is my punk band, and we did the Reknor and Siren party, which was just down the road in New Cross, which is also a fantastic party with bands like Head Jam playing, Bad Transmission, a few other people. That was a really good punk party with drum and bass later on from Siren, and I mean that was great. We finished there and I rushed off to the other party, managed to get in through the hordes of people trying to get in, and managed to do a set, and then we had to rush off and go and get my daughter from Kent, so where she's been babysat by David Drummer's wife's dad. There you go. And, but that was good.
So still helping each other out. That's brilliant.
Well, it's good. It was a party. It was in a cottage. Neil and Lucy, Neil from Tribe of Munt, another big acid techno Scott party crew. They're all down in Kent, and of course we've all got kids now, so they just sort of put all the kids with Justine's dad, who's over from the States, and he graciously looked after them all. We turned up about 5 a.m. and finally could have a drink and toast the new year in after the squat party madness, and then had a little mini party down there, had deck set up, and that was really good until the kids got all brought back and suddenly realised that we had to get back to reality. But yeah, it was good. But yeah, squat parties are going well. We've got pay parties coming up all the time, and
there's one this Friday that you're.
Yep, this is what I was going to say. We've got a party at the Jam on Friday, which I know a lot of the people that listen to your show because I'm into psytrance. So it's a free party. It's called a payback party because we do a couple of events every year at the Jam. Stay at Forever parties generally.
That's in Brixton.
Yep, and so you've got me and Aaron Liberator, Sterling Moss, Rachel Racket, another big part of the crew. And also a guest from Venezuela, Destro, who's who we play for there, who plays hard techno and some funky techno, and he's coming over. I'm picking him up tomorrow from the airport, and so it's quite a good lineup. But it's free to get in, so if you want to test the water with acid techno, you've never heard acid techno before, which I'm sure some of the psytrance people haven't, come along to this party because if you don't like it, you can always leave. It doesn't cost you anything to get in. Of course, all the acid techno people and all the London party heads, please come down 10 o'clock till 6 at the Jam, which is Brixton Road. Can't remember the number, but it's
it's that place in the corner, so kind of easy to find.
Yeah,
you can walk there from the station.
Yeah, free to get in. So come down and have a chat with us and listen to some good music, hopefully, and have a good night on Friday. That is this Friday coming, the 11th. And we've also got another big party coming up on March the 30th, which is going to be our biggest party to date, I think. Not our biggest party to date, but our biggest party for a while, which is going to be in a warehouse venue in London Bridge, and we've also got some really big guests from Europe coming over, which we don't often do. We've got Pet Trio, which is Pet Duo, which from Brazil, play really hard techno, but they're doing something called Pet Trio, which is with Miss Jax, who is one of our heroes. She's been doing acid music since right at the beginning, a big influence on us, and with her Jax Up label, and I think a lot of techno people, will say the same thing. She's just a legend, and we've got the whole acid techno community playing. Yeah. All the Ant, Racket, DDR, all the Liberators, Sterling Moss, Dave the drummer doing a 3-hour set. It's with Hydraulics. It's a Step Forever and Hydraulics party. The Hydraulics and Step Forever never done a party together. Dave the drummer's label Hydraulics, which do their own parties, which are really great. So this is the first time we're doing Step Forever and Hydraulics, so it's a really big thing. That's the 30th of March.
A place called the Sidings in London Bridge.
Yeah, it's at the Sidings in London Bridge. It's a big warehouse venue, 3 rooms. We've got some guests from New School people, Tacit, who just heard is playing, Obi-Wan, there's Austin Corrosive, Giselle, lots of good artists on at this one, and it's going to be immense. It's going to be massive production. So, the kind of thing that everybody keeps asking us to do. We're finally going to do it. So by hook or crook, get yourself down there. That's on March the 30th. All these events, if you want to find more information, are on stayforever.com, on the events page, on our Facebook page, and various other places on the internet. You'll find them. The Jams homepage, you can find out about the Party Friday. But if you really want to find out about it quickly and easily, go to the Facebook page and look at the events. All these parties are listed. So this Friday, free party at the Jam, March the 30th, this big party for SUF 100, and done in conjunction with the Mighty Hydraulics. That's March the 30th at the Sidings in London Bridge.
Excellent. And you mentioned that these artists from around the world, and you played in Barcelona last weekend, and you play around the world all the time. So it's good to see that, as you said, there's that strata of people in that scene they're keeping it alive around the world. And so you played in Venezuela. So it's
I mean, like there's people we know from everywhere. Again, we count as our friends. We're bringing Destro over because he's in Europe playing some gigs, and he's a really good friend. I really want to see him, and it'd be great to have him on a party here. Pet Duo, who are massive now, done really well for themselves from Brazil. We met them in Brazil. They became very good friends with David Drummer and good friends with myself. And it's back to the friends thing. These people are a part of our scene in the sense of we know them from the countries we've been to, and it's very much a family affair in a lot of ways. And same with Barcelona Saturday. It's all the Acid Core crew. They've all stayed at our flat and come over and hung out with us. And the next Onwards and Upwards party, which is another party we do, they'll be coming over to play at that later in the year. Yeah, it's great. And you go to Barcelona, it's still squatters and punks at the party and the same kind of people that you get here. Very much like, they do squat parties, they do their pay parties, and then they do the squat parties and free parties, the same as us. It's very different places, different things. Obviously, Venezuela, South America, you can't quite do the same thing. You've got more restrictions with security because it's more dangerous and stuff. But it's a fantastic worldwide scene. Australia, Japan, all over Europe, Poland, another country where there's a big scene for acid techno, and France. I'm going to France next week, and
so it's still happening. And they will be playing a song from your project, this punk band, and we're talking about how acid techno and punk comes from the kind of political side as well. Yeah. And you're still very passionate about these subjects, and because obviously things are still happening that still need to, but there's also change in the air. I was talking about it in the first hour that, we kind of feel optimistic to do these energies towards the end of last year into this year. A lot of issues being confronted now because people don't want to put up with it anymore, and we want a better world, and you're kind of seeing it. Yeah,
I mean, like we were saying before we went on air, we were chatting about this, but there's the punk thing from the 80s and 70s. It was a very depressing time, and it was, Margaret Thatcher in England was responsible really for dismantling, and the welfare state in a lot of ways, destroying the miners and a lot of communities through that whole kind of bloody minded, we're going to privatise everything, we're going to kill the unions off, we're going to do pretty much like create the private sector as it is now, which is responsible for most of the shit, dare I say it, in the world now. Very capitalist viewpoint. You've got to work hard to get to where you are. Well, it's great if you actually have money in the first place and opportunity, but if you don't, then you're stuck. Like, a massive recession going on now across the world,
which is caused by lack of regulation in these fields.
Yeah, so but behind all that, there's a positivity, I think, occurring. Like I say, this year, it feels like there's a lot of. It's kind of weird because it's almost like it was in the 80s again. The recession's hitting across the world.
Yeah, and then the Tories, whoever is in power, probably would have been doing the same thing. But again, the privatisation is becoming more obvious, and people questioning things a lot more now. And
capitalism. Capitalism itself is being questioned finally as the root of all evil, which it is. From my point of view. It's the thing about it is now is like you've got, as is always the case when there's bad times, you get that root of underground culture expressing itself again. People deciding that they want to listen to more underground things. They don't just want to go with whatever's been force-fed them because they're kind of vaguely happy, with their lot. As soon as people get dissatisfied, then the underground culture reasserts itself, and the ideas that go with that, which are innate ideas. They're not like just things that like they've all been refined. We can look at bands like Crass and look at anarchism and certain brands of socialism and radical ideas and revolutionary ideas. But these things are really, I think, like we were saying, natural like we're aspiring to become that. You know, I've
Yeah.
been a vegetarian for 30 years, and that is, you know, now you see all this thing about eating organic food
Yeah.
and natural food, and about, you know, cows creating methane that's destroying
Yeah.
the atmosphere. These things are natural things that the goodness of people will come through, I
Yeah.
hope. And when these bad times happen, it kind of almost, it's almost better for people to have a bit of, it's not good for people to have hardship, and it's obviously awful in the third world where people are getting exploited all the time. No, I'm not decrying that. And places like Spain where the recession is biting so hard that most people aren't working. But it creates this unity and community,
Yeah.
and these ideas come through again, and people start rebelling, basically. They just start going, you know what, F that, I'm not doing it. And
Yeah.
we're going to get on with this, and you know what, my things are really bad, so I'm going to go make punk music again. I'm going to go make techno. I'm going to make acid music. We're going to do squat parties. We're going to do take back what is ours, you know,
and coming together like we see in Greece, because everything's really bad there, but now people are bartering and
yeah, going back to more, you know, basic ideas, you know, not just effing people over, like, which is what most people do in capitalism. They make money out of other money and exploit other people. It's just exploitation. That's what capitalism is. You know, we all have to live within it and abide by it. But, you know, I'm sick of the whole morality that comes with capitalism. It's like, it's okay, is it, to make money out of somebody else? That's okay. So therefore we can base a whole moral ethic on that. What a load of crap, you know. Where did that come from, you know? It's wrong.
But that's how I can see it changing, because through the hardship, as you say, people are having to deal with things about themselves and how they deal in these situations. And when they fix that reflection then out in the world is healing almost, and they kind of and also
you know,
people's experiences are very similar.
Yeah.
And when they share them, then other people realize they're going through the same things, and it's like kind of this.
But it's that, you know, it's like the same thing. Like you go out on a street protest, you know, a very empowering thing to do.
Yeah.
You go to a rave or a party, and like, you know, everyone's smiling. I smile. I love it. You get into the energy. I'm a big positivity person. I'm a humanist. Yeah, I want people to have a good time. But the energy of something good can also create, you know, swift, you know, and you know, gigantic political sort of change without it actually expressing anything. You don't have to say I'm an anarchist and F the system. Like, you can actually say, you know, we're going to a rave and we're going to do a party, and it's going to be some energy created from this, which is going to be positive energy. And people are going to walk away from there going, actually, you know, I was a racist before I went to this thing, and I've danced with, you know, all sorts of different ethnic people that I would never have, like, probably even bothered talking to. And I came to here, and it's a positive thing. And I came away from this all-night party going, you know what, I don't want to go to work on Monday. It's shit. You know, I want to go do something more positive in my life. And these kind of things are, you know, come from something that's not actually tangible politics. But that whole thing, like you said, we're feeling a little bit of a surge of this energy coming through now. And I think that, you know, you have to be positive. I mean, you know, everyone's saying it's going to be the end of the world about a month ago. Like, you know.
Well, I mean, I spoke about that actually in the show, because my belief was that it was an end of an age, and we're moving into this time where this energy is a bit more apparent, and if people are open to it, they can sort of tune into it almost, and then it kind of helps this process.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, it's just the age of Aquarius.
That's it. So I can see a lot of
spiritual times are coming. You know?
Exactly, a lot of changes afoot, but positive within people. So looking forward to it.
I mean, people are fantastic, really. I mean, you get all this kind of, people get bad press. You know, there's a lot of people there are bad people, obviously, but people that have been messed up by the environment and the way they've grown up. But generally, what you find from the rave scene, I think, and certainly from squat parties and stuff. Certainly from squat parties and stuff, is you get like I've seen the baddest people show little glints of goodness and positivity. You know, if you see that in a person and you know it's there, that makes that person good. Even if you don't like some of the things they do, if they're capable of doing that, then that's a positive thing. And
because we're all at our very essence good, and you know, we love ourselves, and we are, you know, these sort of beautiful beings. But it's been the society and what has been imprinted on us by
that's what it
system.
is, like, you know, materialistic stuff over spiritual stuff. I mean, we're all, you know, we've got it in ourselves to be good, you know, and you know, I go to Brazil and all these different places, Japan, and you see the same things in people expressed through the music. The music has that power to bring that out in people, all kinds of music, but you know, also all kinds of other influences have the power to wreck people and make them into you know, a lot worse than they are. But I think the intrinsic thing in the human soul is a positive thing.
Yeah,
You know.
and the system's urge to kind of compartmentalize us, through education and the kind of system, if you like, to make us these good workers that will do these jobs and keep the system going.
Well, the system is inherently
dysfunctional, and then people as a result become dysfunctional out of the back of it.
Yeah, because they're not happy with their lot. They're not, obviously no one is. I mean, at the end of the day, the third world works for the first world.
Yeah.
Right at the bottom in the sweatshop level, makes all the products for the first world. The people in the first world, like at the lower end of things, are working to keep that whole thing running, and then the people at the top. I mean, it's just the pyramid of it's a disgraceful pyramid of wrongness. What else can you say about it? But how can you change it? Well, you can just be positive and try and make people think about their own very subtle interactions with each other. Don't mess with somebody else. Don't F somebody else over. That's what. You've got to try and produce that
I
kind
think that's
of
what's going to be
empathy.
happening, and that's where the change is going to come by people in their own way being good with each other, and on this sort of, if you like, grassroots level, and people realizing, like they are in Greece, that they don't need the system that's been imposed on them. Yeah,
that's it. Empower yourselves, people. We are here. That's why all the DIY culture, the punk culture, the techno ravers, the techno culture is all about empowering yourself, doing your own things, and making it happen. Whether someone tells you can or not, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
you don't have permission to do anything. So.
Fantastic. So on that note, shall we play one of your songs in from your punk band? What was it? Do you want to talk about the origins of the band or how you formed it?
It's me and Geezer, Guy McCaffrey. We were just come back from somewhere, and we were talking about old bands that we really liked, and we basically decided we'd like to write some for fun, really. And we were actually talking about stupid bands as well as political bands like Crass and people like that. We were talking about bands like The Shapes, all these old Splodge, these weird, stupid bands that were like punk bands that made really indie DIY sounding records that we used to love the sound of, even though they were really badly made. They were just great, they really got that vibe and energy. So we were thinking about writing some songs like that, which we went ahead and did for fun. And then eventually, I played them to Carmel, my wife. She's, can I come and sing on some of these songs? I want to write some songs. Got a drummer in, David, and that we went on to be Dogshite and started playing live. I was never into that idea at first, but we did it. And David's not with the band anymore at the moment because I've switched to drums because he couldn't do some gigs, and we're not quite sure of the fluidity of the band is now getting, which I quite like, we're moving around. But so I'm playing drums now. We've got Carl from Back to the Planet, who's also part of the techno scene and drum and bass scene as well. He's playing bass, and we've been doing loads of gigs again, and it's great. And like I say, playing in my other old punk band, Hag Eye the Womb, so starting to get back into drumming again. It's quite good.
Excellent. Well,
don't worry, people. I'm not giving up on techno. I still love it.
Well, look forward to checking it out.
Worship you, you must think that I am easy for. Well, I don't want you, you can strike me dead as I'm bleeding. Move on ahead, there's no incentive for me to worship you. You must think that I am easy for. So you knock me down and you push around with your deadly horses, so bully bound. Seek emancipation with this demonstration. Gonna reap justice with my whole being. So you knock me down and you push around with your deadly horses, so bully bound. Seek emancipation with this demonstration. Gonna reap justice with my whole being.
So this is Phoenix FM on Graham Stannard, and we're musical meandering and continuing as well, because it's happened a couple of times before, but going past midnight here. Fortunately, we got the freedom to do that, because it's been great to have this wonderful conversation with Chris and find out about what's going on. And then in this case, hearing his punk band Dogshite here.
You won't control me. In my wisdom, I am all seeing.
So what was the you can. Yeah, just wanted to talk about the kind of influences in this music.
Well, what I was going to say was that there's a lot of bands now that I kind of got back into going to see bands. There's some really good bands playing on our scene, like when we played at the Recnor party at New Year, like Head Jam, who are a fantastic band, really kind of spacey kind of punk. It's really hard to describe it, but a little bit of ska influences and reggae stuff, but it's very dubby, some of the music they play, but just amazingly good musicians and really, really underground sort of sound, but really their attitude towards the whole thing is just really spot on, And there's been a really good wave of like new bands. I mean, for me, there's a lot of good sort of underground punk bands playing that I've seen. We've played with a lot of those recently, and I've been really excited about that. But there's also bands kind of coming through. There's a band called the Skints I went to see only like a week ago. I just think they're the most amazing band. They're a reggae band from East London, and punky kind of reggae. They've come out of the punk scene, and they've come out of this kind of new wave of punk that sort of happened about a few years back with bands like King Blues and Sonic Bloom 6, who I personally like all these bands a lot. Random Hand, kind of some of them are Scary based kind of punk, but they're just really. It's got that energy that I was saying about.
Yeah.
I've not felt it in punk music for a long time, but it seems to be back. There seems to be a lot of bands fighting in their own way the system and doing things themselves, like Skints,
But there's also, I noticed in that song a bit of a sound of that indie vibe as well, a bit of the kind of Sonic Youth or Pixies vibe to it as well.
we never, with Dogshite, certainly we're not one trick pony kind of thing. We're not very good. No, we're we're punk, we're not like saying we're really musically great. We're not, but we kind of, we're definitely doing different kinds of songs in the band, and we're not kind of going with we've got to be a ska punk band because that's what's in right now.
Right.
We're definitely not.
Yeah, but
we do some ska punk stuff, but we're doing all sorts of things, and I'm sure we'll just end up. We also got quite a humorous streak, so we're quite political on one song and then completely stupid on the next one. So again,
that's good though. So many bands I've had on recently been talking about this, that I think this is coming back to unity or convergence, because so many people are making music now that you can't define in like a pigeonhole. Like my friend Yinku, who's actually going to be in the show next week, his music is very much, you can't really put a name to it. You can sort of say that you can compare it to artists that were in their own fields, like, for example, Jane's Addiction, who were a kind of a rock band, but not exactly, and then there's a lot more of that happening. So it's I
think that the problem with a lot of it has been there's been so much compartmentalization of music. So it happens within techno as well. It just becomes like, there's techno, then there's Detroit techno, and then there's Detroit techno and funky techno, hard techno, acid techno, this, that, and the other techno. Eventually, it comes to be like just almost like meaningless subgenres. In the world of rock music, obviously, when a band like Jane's Addiction came out, they were kind of really different. Anyway, you couldn't. There was a lot of bands coming out in that sort of 90s, like Chili Peppers and stuff, which redefined rock music again. But it still kind of then became categorised. But like you say,
because
now,
they created a category almost for them.
Yeah, now it's kind of like, what is punk? I'd say I played a track from the Skints maybe, from their first album, which is reggae, but it's the first album especially from the Skints is very reggae, but it's punk. It's got that anger of punk, and it's very socially aware. And again, where they fit in, they're not a reggae band as such, but they are a reggae band, but they're not like a Jamaican reggae band. But they're not like a UB40 or something like that, much more tougher and harder. And they still got a punk edge to them. So where do you put them, And that seems to be a lot like that now, the music. But I think, I think it's because it's become so compartmentalised. You can't, really pigeonhole bands anymore. And
also, I guess, the people that are coming through and making the music, it come from a background where they were into so many different things. Because I think years ago, or like into the 80s and 90s, people who made music liked one style of music. And they made that music when they got into a band or, electronic. But now people that are making music are into everything. And that I think it obviously influences the music that they make, because all these different it's probably subconscious even. They're probably not even thinking about what style of music they're making. They're just making music they like, and then it comes out.
Well, I think so. I mean, obviously with electronic music, you've got the ability to make music on your own or with someone else on a computer where you can fiddle about with it, and it's, you know, the time where you had to, you know, to be generic, that's gone now. You know, it's not even about dancing in a club or a party. You know, you can make electronica that isn't danceable. You can make weird, interesting stuff. A lot more like it was in the early 80s. You know, when you had more experimental stuff going on. But you know, you've seen a massive success of labels like Warp and people like that, just putting out very, very eclectic style electronica. But with the band thing as well, you know, it's funny. I think with the band thing a little bit more, there's still a pigeonholing going on. There's definitely, like, you know, like I say with the ska punk thing, you know, that's become a thing. Like bands like Interterrestrials were the kind of in the underground scene, like kind of moved it into this kind of area, Citizen Fish and people like that, which were like bands that really defined this style. But then a lot of, not copycat bands, bands have kind of gone, oh, we want ska in our music. It has to be ska and it has to be punk, this thing. So you still get a little bit of that kind of, oh, it's got to be, you know, part of that whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I think in the mainstream, though, I will say this. I really wanted to say this. In the mainstream of bands, I think certainly like this next year or two, hopefully with the, you know, with this glut of underground music coming through, I've seen the mainstream of music, I think, deteriorate. You know, I really don't want to slag bands off because I don't like doing that, but I find it's almost like the 70s again with a lot of the mainstream bands that are kind of big bands that are just really boring. Just coffee table music, you know what I mean?
But I think going back to
I
think going back to the not conspiracies or political side, but I think that was maybe not intentional, but the people that are almost in charge of, you know, releasing the music or deciding what's mainstream, they almost want it to be this blandness because they want to either, you know, tranquilize or not people. They want people's minds to be expanded or thinking outside certain boundaries, so they make them. They feed them this music. To
I mean, it's a bit like that. I think very much so. I think it's kind of this sort of get your soma, you know, kind of from this music, just you know. But I find it depressing because I see young kids kind of just buying into it, and you know, if you think the most rebellious band that you can, you know, I do know people that, and no offence to what they like, but I mean, if you think the Killers is the be all and end all of rebellious music, and that's the band you want to go and see, then. You know, it reminds me of bands like Camel and stuff in the 70s, and people go, oh, I'm going to go and see Barclay James Harvest. You know, you're kind of like going, what's that saying? You know, like, not much. I mean, fine if you like that kind of music, then I've got nothing wrong with that. But for young kids, you know, I think it's got to be a bit more than that. You've got to have something.
A bit of inspiration or something.
Yeah, music is the thing that drives you on. You know? It's pure manna for the soul, and also for your ideas in your head. It's the thing that changes your mind and pushes you forward into realms of thinking that you wouldn't possibly get to if you didn't have music. And it's such a powerful thing to be made brain dead with it, like, you know. And like I say, I'm not suggesting that bands like the Killers are responsible for that, and some of their music is all right, but it's just
as an example,
you know, I feel it is like the 70s a little bit. Like it needs something to come along and stop that from happening.
Because I think that's bound to naturally happen because it did in the 70s. You know, it's almost like eventually it's like a critical mass. Yeah. It's almost like people can't put up with it anymore. Then something from the underground is released into the overground, but no one knows what it is yet. You know, I wondered what it was going to be, maybe from electronic music or I don't know. But
the saddest thing of all, I think, is because all music is not dangerous anymore. You know, every kind of style has been assimilated into the mainstream. So like, you know, we have, you know, in some ways it's a good thing, but like, you know, you have like the Olympics or something, you've got like Danny Boyle putting out, you know, including as much as, you know, the Queen herself, you know, you've got the Sex Pistols, you know, as part of English heritage, and we've got like Mutoid Waste doing stuff for the actual ceremony, which is fantastic as well. But you know, these are part of things that I believe are part of my culture, and they're not part of mainstream culture, but they've been assimilated into mainstream culture, and now they're not challenging as much. I'm not saying they're still not challenging, because they still are challenging, but they're not as much. And I was listening to Radio 6,
maybe that's kind of not a bad thing that they're showing little glimpses of.
No, I think that's what I'm saying. It has a positive side as well, but it also means that like it's more difficult to be outrageous. You know, every kind of techno has been made, from the hardest nosebleed gabber and hardcore, and through to like, you know, the most druggy sort of, you know, slows, mid-range, high-end, fast, trebly, bassy, like, you know, dirgy, you know, screaming vocals over top of, you know, horrible clashing, mashed up breaks. Everything, you know, has been done. And nothing is outrageous anymore, and nothing is challenging in the way that, you know, punk bands can scream their heads off, but they're not going to ever challenge in that same way. So it's kind of almost got to be a subtle thing that moves it all again.
Yeah, forward. I mean, I know what you mean. I don't know if this is what you're going to say about like Radio 6, but they have seemed to have this theme of this sort of folky side there, which, I mean, obviously some of that music is nice in its own way and for what it is, but if that's just the kind of the main genre that's being promoted on there as the kind of alternative to the, you know, mainstream other radio stations, then it's not quite as...
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I mean, I think, obviously, Radio 6, I think, is a fantastic station.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant that it's on. But I just have the same problem with that I have with a lot of radio. Except for possibly John Peel, you know, rest in peace.
Oh my goodness,
who we loved. Like, but you know, listen to Radio 6, and I listen to 2 songs I hate them, and then 2 songs I like. But I can't understand why a radio show has to be so eclectic. Does it have to keep this listenership that it's got to keep playing something? I mean, yesterday or something, it was on Carmel. My wife listens to it. You know, has it on all the time, and you know, some sort of old session from My Bloody Valentine, sort of bashing out like really feedback type thing, and then some other thing of just bland new band that just doesn't say anything to anybody.
But maybe that's not a bad thing. They have to sweeten the pill, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, but then again, it just puts the more outrageous end of the music, the challenging music, kind of says, "Oh, it's all acceptable. We can have this on in the daytime, and we can play this. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's great." You know? Yeah,
I guess that's.
But it also cheapens it, I think, a little bit. It's sort of saying, "Well, you know, we can play this and we can play that," but it's not like it's new stuff, but it's kind of saying these bands didn't say anything in the first place because we can now play it on mainstream radio, even though it's Radio 6, it's not mainstream.
Yeah, but that's kind of, I mean, coming back close to home, that's why I love about, you know, Phoenix FM, because we allow that as well in the evenings. Each show has its own eclectic mix, and you know, there's no kind of limit to what people can play. So that's a nice platform for that, I think. And
that's
for
it,
a community station, it gives you that platform for it.
I'm saying negative things about Radio 6. It shouldn't, because obviously they've got to keep their listenership and they've got to keep the ratings high, otherwise it will be lost, and that would be another gem in the toilet of you know, we don't want to see that happen, obviously. So I'm perhaps criticising the wrong thing. But, you know, I still think, like I say, sometimes.
But there is this sort of opportunity now, or this threshold that we're reaching for this either something from the underground or some change that's going to happen. Because I mean, looking back, I remember seeing there's some old footage of who was it playing at Wembley Stadium in like the 70s. ELO, I think, and they had all their kind of, you know, their clothes and their big hair, and the music was, you know, of what they were playing. But then it's like this sort of just before punk was about to happen, you can sort of see why that happened. It was,
you know, I mean, I saw this magazine interview with not magazine interview, TV interview with Mark Perry, Mark P from Sniffing Glue fanzine, and he was like on some Sunday lunchtime chat show thing, and he was like being interviewed about punk, and I remember him just saying, "Oh, these just dinosaurs have got to be swept away. They're over. Their time is finished. You know, they're just like, you know." And I like some of those bands before punk.
But because obviously each era has its influence and stuff, and you know, looking back, they did in terms of music.
Yeah, and of course, like you can listen fondly back to sort of hits by ELO and people like that. I don't dislike them. You know, some of the tracks of, you know, it was, you know, just fun pop music. It was fine, but to have to listen to that and that be it, you know, it was depressing. I mean, Pink Floyd, I still think are fantastic. You know, some of those bands from that time just they were political. They were, you know, mind expanding and everything else that Pink Floyd were when they started. I think they carried through their whole career and through the 70s were brilliant. You know, I still think they're brilliant now. You know, just as challenging in a different kind of way to punk, But, you know, it was good that they got swept under the carpet with everybody else and like had to fight to come back up, you know, because that's what punk was like. It just cleared the way, you know, and it cleared the way for people like us. I mean, there would be no, I'm pretty sure there would be no techno scene as it is now if it wasn't for punk, you know.
Yeah.
And certainly no squat party vibe, you know, that punk made that happen. And
because it was like the precedent.
Yeah, the precedent. And the people that carried it on were a lot of those were old punks. You know, we did loads of, you know, it was quite funny like, doing eviction parties
Yeah.
with some of the punks that we had on our scene. And I remember like, every music's rubbish, like, they didn't like techno at all, but like, give them a pill and they'd all be like, oh, it's all right. As soon as they come down, no, we don't like that. Punk, we're punk, we don't like electronic music, it's rubbish. But like, there's always been that thing. But the fact that they, it all happened around them, and it was a very punk vibe, to those
Should we play another example? Should we?
Well, I mean, we could play something. Yeah, let's
live sort of.
I'll tell you what we could play.
Rummaging.
We could play something. This is a band that almost got quite famous, but they split up recently, called the King Blues.
Mm-hmm.
But to put it into perspective, like, this album's called Long Live the Struggle. It was their last album. Number 3.
Yeah.
If you put number 3 on.
Okay, we'll just grab that one. Okay.
I got really inspired by Itch, the guy that sings. Although it's kind of like I say, they've unfortunately split up now. They're more commercial end of punk, but the fact that the album is very political. All his lyrics are always really political, and the music is quite accessible. But I really like that. I'm really glad to see that someone's really prepared to put their neck out politically and really challenge musically. And you listen to the song, it's quite good, but it's actually really hard hitting lyrics. And I think that's good. They got in the charts almost. Like they almost kind of like got to say something quite radical without. But it just carries on. He's still doing stuff. I think as a solo artist, he's going to be bringing another album out. But I mean, it's not from our scene as per se. But I've got something from someone like Interterrestrials. We'll play something like that maybe in a minute, which is a band that's been treading the boards for the last 10, 15 years and come from the punk scene. And we do gigs with them, and I really have a lot of admiration for them. But that's what I mean. That we're saying, like, at the moment, it's just all over the place. The whole music scene is good, but the zeitgeist is pushing it towards challenging rather than not challenging. Certainly from the underground in all its facets.
Okay, let's give it a go.
From the view in the office on the 16th floor, and that you gained 21 years for, staring out the window with the big billboard to remind you what you're fighting for. It's this guy's life with his flawless smile, his beautiful wife and his perfect child. So to buy and be this guy you choose, and remind yourself your tie is not a noose. Freedom is not a coffee break with your boss. Eat, sleep, breathe, the predestined stops. And Xerox 100 times, and now 100 people read what board is a right. Or we can all be bored as a team after all. Isn't that the American dream? If that's the dream and you can't shake it up, then please wake me up. The world's closing in, I'm kicking out. They can't hear me when I shout. Modern life has let me down. It's so destroying, don't you love it? You can take this job and shove it. Modern life has let me down. Modern life has let me down. Modern life has let me down. Come home and slam the door of your 4x4 that you never had and never will have a use for, and take a walk through the uniform lawn, knowing that you'll die in the town you were born. A pre-packaged meal, a pre-packaged plate, in front of the TV on a pre-packaged tray. The choice to be free, and we choose to be like everybody else. The world's closing in, I'm kicking out. They can't hear me when I shout. Modern life has let me down. It's so destroying, don't you love it? You can take this job and shove it. Modern life has let me down. Modern life has let me down. Whatever happened to the love and the unity, the building up of the community? Cause now it's all opportunity. It's like the ocean's tainted with impurity. So when the norm is the lunacy and they tell you to jump, do you agree? And if I don't, well, they're suing me. It's like you don't know what you do to me. When you shut me up and you shout me out, and you tell me like there never was a doubt. It's all planned out. How are we living? Dangle a carrot to keep me driven. But now I'm killing anything I give her, cause I will never give in. I'll take a hammer, I'll whip precision, tear up the newspaper and smash the television. The world's closing in, I'm kicking out. They can't hear me when I shout. The modern life loving. Modern life has let me down. 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 Modern life has let me down.
Indeed, Modern Life there by the
King Blues.
King Blues, fantastic.
Yeah. From Long Live the
I see what you
Sun.
mean. It's kind of like a sing-along.
Yeah, pretty anthemic commercial punk, but the lyrics are really spot on, you know. It's,
Yeah, and I was like trying to think of a song that kind of reminded me of like an American, not a mainstream because they're like the longest sort of lasting independent label band and really successful, but yes.
Can't think who it was.
No, unfortunately not.
So
But yeah, so you mean that kind of, that style, which shows the spectrum really of.
yeah, I mean,
there
I
is.
just think it's nice to hear bands like kind of almost crossing over into the mainstream. When they came out as a quite folky sort of band, I don't think where they ended up 3 albums later was what everybody wanted from them. But I think it was good what each did with the band. I think it was like, you know, he took it to the point of almost being able to get it on the radio, and they did have a hit with a second album, I think. But you know, it didn't. You know, the band split up.
So I remember it was No Effects.
Oh, No Effects, yeah, of course, yeah. So, but that's the thing. I mean, American bands. It's another story altogether. There was Dead Kennedys through the Fugazi era, like Minor Threat, and then Fugazi.
Yeah, and I played
I'm
like
absolutely massive
Black
fan of
Flag and stuff.
Black Flag, Henry Rollins. Well, actually that brings me to something else. Actually, we sampled Henry Rollins for one of our techno tracks, which I should perhaps play as well. Called Punk Attitude, which is a good track to play because it's literally like we just sampled a hero of ours, like Henry Rollins, who's the originator of Black Flag band, and a very vociferous person with lots to say. But,
yeah, that's right.
But there was a documentary which featured him, which was really, really good. Documentary made by Don Letts, and it's called Punk Attitude, and he's in that, and he just has the quote of the whole thing. We sampled it, and it just says everything about society now and the way things are. You know, it just sums it up, and we sampled that from one of our tracks. But yeah,
I was trying to dig it out, but let's perhaps play another one that of that similar vibe. Or
do you want to see what I'll maybe play this? It's Inner Terrestrials, which are a band that play the kind of like on our scene, as in, you know, they're playing a punk scene, but a very underground band. I'd like to play them because I think they deserve it more than anything else, because they've been representing the underground side of the punk scene. And this is from their new album, which is but hats off to them.
Yeah, so continuing the vibe here in Musical Meanderings on Phoenix FM, because it's kind of, it happens to me before, and I get kind of lost in conversation, especially because you got here a bit later, because sometimes it's a bit easier if you kind of people land after 10 or whatever, but it's good to kind of make up for it and keep it going.
Yeah, well, hopefully people are still interested in what we're waffling on about now. Like, the interviews can sometimes be, and chats can sometimes get a bit boring for other people, but I mean, you know.
But probably tied up soon. But which song did you fancy playing on?
The first one's called Law Dealers. This is a demo thing from their album, but it's off their album, which is out now, I think. Tales of Terror.
Smash down my door, 6 in the morning, come the Lord to protect me from myself and my wicked ways, relieve me of my jaw. I could some see, when nature dies through corporate greed, but you distribute dangerous drugs, people in the third world die from me. Better lectures on what's good for me, where you phosphor bombs and the Zyklon B, and your pharmaceutical companies and your biocide society. Well, let's get it right. Here we put the bricks and bottles aside. right and talk about the truth. What they represent has the price to you. Toting gun, supposed to get the bad men on their tongue. Trigger up the hooligans in uniforms that follows where they go. Controlled substance abuse, but what about the chemicals they use? Pesticide, insecticide, fossil fuel, infanticide. There is no trust, everybody knows that the law deals drugs. There's no respect, the people know that the state deals death. This ain't no joke, everybody knows that the law burns dope. Better rope, work where the families all hope. Trust, everybody knows that the law deals drugs. There's no respect, the people know that the state deals death. This ain't no joke, everybody knows that the law burns dope. Better rope, work where the families all hope.
Marvellous. That's the Interterrestrials here on Phoenix FM, the continuation of musical meanderings. Great pleasure of still being joined by Chris Liberator, and the conversation's just been flowing wonderfully. And on that note, I wanted to give a shout out to people in the chat room via the Phoenix FM website and still in the streaming. A lot of people joining us tonight, built up from a nice little shout out on Facebook today, and just letting people know that it's going on. So that's quite nice to kind of feel the feedback, and a lot of people are coming to check it out, which is quite nice.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm getting lots of texts for. I'm not really trying to look at my phone too much, but nice comments from people. My friend Dave Blondes just sent, who I respect very massively, and just said, "Oh, it's a really good show." So, he's another person who straddles all things. He's likes punk, and he likes lots of different stuff, and he's a sound engineer and does sound for our band quite a lot. So it helps us out many a time. But I appreciate the fact that he said he thought it was okay, because he likes all kinds of music. So good. So
Great
hopefully everyone else is feeling the same. I just feel like we're waffling on a bit, but
I know what you mean,
enjoying our own company and chatting about stuff, but setting the world to rights.
Makes us so kind of comfortable as well, because I guess I kind of, and I feel this a lot on my show. Actually, I was talking again in the first hour about feeling self-conscious and dealing with issues about myself, like that, kind of how I taught it in with the conversation, because again about how I think how we're moving on in society and as people by dealing with issues within ourselves to kind of then be reflected out and help, some kind of, bringing us together or something. But I was talking about kind of lack of maybe self-love issues and worrying about people thought. And again, like thinking back to the show, and, usually I'll go to midnight and tie it up, and it goes quite well. But I guess I got this opportunity because it can kind of carry on a little bit. This evening, so and you came after 11 o'clock as well, so it kind of keeps things going a little bit, because again, when there's so much to talk about as well, and the conversation can flow. Well,
I'm really pleased. I mean, it's really nice to sit here and chat rather than just go, right, we've got to finish. We've got half an hour, 20 minutes. So it's good. Yeah. I felt it's a really nice way to. I mean, hopefully, if everyone's watching or listening, they're enjoying it as well. And I feel like it's a conversation. I mean, it's the kind of radio you listen to. I like listening to chat radio, but you don't get a lot of time to hear it on, people that especially like artists and people that, I find interesting, novelists and people like that. You get them on these kind of obscure chat shows sometimes. And when you actually find someone being interviewed like that, it's a revelation to hear them talk about what they feel about and what they know. I think that's a really good thing. I'd like to, I like to listen to what people have to say. You get very, few chances to do that. Not that anyone wants to listen to what I've got to say, possibly, but
no, I'm sure they definitely do.
Better than listening to you play records all the time.
But for me, I guess I get a bit of cabin fever sometimes, because I had little spells where I do the show on my own and I just come in and play music, and sometimes I find it difficult to talk about things apart from those records. But it's nice though, because then you can talk about the music and why you like it and the reflections. But then at the same time, sometimes I try and then bring in stuff I'm dealing with in the world, and then I kind of wonder if people don't want to, hear about what I'm, my perspective on things. But then I think the sharing of experiences as well is important, because then people are listening, because if they're feeling similar things, or just hearing different examples of it, can be quite nice.
I think analog radio, if you've got somebody like yourself, people listen to every week, it's kind of comforting in a way, because you're hearing somebody speak, especially if they're speaking about stuff that you believe in. I mean, like we're talking about this dichotomy between what I call, say, straight society and the underground scene in all its kind of massive way that it works, because it's not just one little group of people, it's a massive undercurrent that goes on, and it's represented by people like yourself talking about stuff. So people that listen to you, it's kind of, I like analog radio because I listen to it, and when people were like we're all affected by John Peel, for example, but we all felt we connected with him, and it was like somebody speaking to me about music, about really good music, that loved it, that really. And when you hear somebody talking on the radio that's like, that he's talking to you, that's what this is about. King Blues are talking to me. When I heard the King Blues, I hear them talking to me. When the Terrestrials are playing, they're talking to me. The Terrestrials are talking to me, because they're talking about stuff that I want to hear about. And I know other people are representing it, and that's through music, When acid techno is playing, or techno, or whatever music you like, it's talking to you. If you connect with it and you feel something from it, it's talking to you. But it's very rare that you actually hear someone on the TV or radio talking to you about something that you might be interested in, or even discussing elements of stuff, because they all talk crap most of the time, because it's mainstream stuff that doesn't get aired and doesn't get spoken about. Stuff that we're talking about, like, anything from cosmic ideas to anarchism or the state of the nation, those kind of things don't get spoken about on the radio very often. And
it's good to have the ability to do it again, and then going back to community radio and the likes of Phoenix FM, because then I've been involved in some of the daytime shows and the events they do, like at Christmas. We're involved in the switching on the lights locally, or in the kind of event for that, and they had then to have the connection with the community around as well is also very good. So you feel very fortunate here to be able to do this. Have these people that can listen, online throughout the world, and then at the same time on FM and around Brentwood and these parts of Essex has been really nice. And I'm glad you said that, because I sometimes, again, going back to wondering how it comes across sometimes, I enjoy playing all the music I like, but sometimes I try and build the path between them. But sometimes it's hard to do that between, like, say, rock and then into psytrance or something.
I think there's a good connection between the two. Like, personally, like I said to you before, like, there's been times when, there's been a good crossover of things. There's bands, like I say, Here and Now, a great example of this, a kind of band from the Stonehenge era, who I saw play a lot of times, and I have a lot of respect for, because they transcended like the hippie rock thing and became almost like punk, but they were still very much rooted in rock. But they literally were the stepping stone between what became like the punk scene, like the bands like the Mob and the less hardcore of the anarcho bands that were very hippie punk. They were travellers, they were living in squats, they were living in vehicles. They were very much, kind of hippies in a way, but they were punk as well. And you get these bands like Here and Now that played this kind of, they almost like straddled two eras, the end of the Stonehenge hippie free festival thing into the new, more grimy punk rock squat kind of thing, and they did it well. And I think if you can, there's no reason why, even in psychedelic trance, you've got psychedelic trance, it's electronic music, it's psychedelic, but you had psychedelic rock, and there wasn't electronic music when psychedelic rock was being made, so they made psychedelic rock, but it was still psychedelic. It was taking acid and taking these drugs, that they were doing the same things that we do, maybe not dancing so frenetically as people do now, but like it has to. You have to show those links, I think, to people, and
and the influence as well. I mean, as you say, with the psychedelic trance, you have the psychedelic rock, but then all these other strands, like bands like Tool as well, were very influential in that solid music.
Well, I think that's the thing is linking it all together. I mean, for someone like me, I spend a lot of time thinking about all the facets of the underground scene in all their entirety, and trying to link all these different things together and seeing the links quite a lot. But there is, for me, it's really important to say what I think about it, because I've seen a lot of different things. I'm not there's loads of sides of all kinds of music I don't see and I don't understand and can't put together. But what I do know is I keep reading these books that people write, magazines and stuff. They're writing history on our behalf, and we are history.
Yeah.
You know, we are the people making it. You know, us, not a journalist who's sitting in some way going, right, actually, well, you know what? Techno came from this, and house music came from this, and punk came from this, and you know what? We can write it all together, put this line here from this to this, and this is how it was, and that's it, finalised, done. We'll put it in Wikipedia tomorrow, and that's going to be the end of it. That's defined, and that's it. And it's not defined
because everything is fluid, and they try and take a snapshot in that moment and describe it.
Yeah, you know.
But sometimes when they've done that, it can change after that.
Well, that's how history's written, and how we're lied to as well, because you know history's always written from the oppressor.
Yeah.
You know, no one ever could write history if they had time to write it. You know, they were basically you don't have time to write history if you're like working in a mine or whatever. You know, in the 19th century, you only got time to write books and write history from the point of view of having the leisurely classes, i.e. the rich. You know, and this day and age, it's a lot easier to expand and expound. You know, you can write stuff, but you know, there's still a kind of with the internet as well, especially you can say what you like and you can get people that have their blogs followed and stuff like that, and it's a lot easier to put out common perceptions of things, but it's still the ruling way of thinking is still the thing that decides how culture is laid out and how it's defined and how it's well, like I said, you know, in some ways we talk about Danny Boyle and we say the Olympics, brilliant, fantastic that they've got all this stuff like from the different people represented in the culture, but at the end of the day it homogenises it makes it into something, it nullifies it in a lot of ways. You know?
It does, but I kind of still see that as a positive influence because I know what you mean. I'm just trying to bridge the gap a bit because on one hand, you'd like it to be the sudden burst of whatever the underground is and shown in that environment. But I wonder perhaps if people like Danny Boyle would worry that would be too brash and too much of a sharp.
Well, no, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone I've spoken to anywhere has actually said, oh, it was a load of rubbish, because I think most people felt really happy that he'd actually embraced as much as he could about English culture. Yeah. And, like, you know, at the end of the day, we all slag off, like, politics and stuff like that, but I'm proud to be English in a sense that, like, I think England is a country of, well, London especially, is a country of so many different melting pot of different ideas. Yeah. And the English people are, like, you know, they've got a bit of gumption, you know, to them. And that's why I hate when the system gets too, you know, people get too zoned out with like, oh, everything's all right, and they're all like, just like, because that's not the English way. Yeah,
really. Like they're too tranquilised, and it's almost like that's why they want that to happen. See a bit of like, you know, gumption from the people come out and, you know, get up and go
challenge stuff, you know, street protest and you know, rioting, not the kind of rioting we had where it's just people trying to loot and stuff like that. That's almost like, you know, that's another endemic. Almost like another thing that shows how corroded society is. That it's come to that, but it's, you know, that kind of thing where people are expressing things all the time and challenging, and you know, like you go to the States and people drive at the same speed. You know, you've got 3 lanes of the motorway where everyone's going 70 miles an hour and you don't overtake. I mean, I don't understand why you know. In England, people drive too fast because they break the law. They don't give a shit, you know. They do it, and like, you know, that's the English way, you know. In a lot of ways,
but it's almost again going back to them. The people, or maybe the people in power, the oppressors, they don't want that, so they kind of tranquilize and just prevent that from happening. So it's
it's the whole thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, we talk about say something else like the drugs trade. I mean, that's an amazingly interesting subject because I mean. As someone pointed out to me, like if you wanted to stop, say, cocaine coming to the States or coming to this country, you could just, you know, you could just take control of the cocaine trade. They'd spend a lot less money doing that. They just took over the drugs trade and sold it to people. They could clean it up. They could completely control how much people had. You know, they could, you know, make it like alcohol and control it. And they would spend a lot less money doing it. They don't do that, do they? They let it happen, you know, and they let all the criminalisation and countries be destroyed by the drug cartels and why don't they just take it over? They could do that so easily. Like, the whole thing would be over. Like, you know, it would be like, okay, people still take drugs, but they don't do that because they need it to they need it to upset society. They still need the people that really probably would be challenging to society to be anaesthetised by these things that, you know, and because they're illegal, they can still make a war on it, and the whole
And the people at the top are probably the right people at the top are making money out of it.
And they're fighting it at the same time. They're making a war out of it. They're making people like kind of think there's something to fight against, you know. When, you know, but these kind of issues are always like, you know, the muddy, difficult ones to actually perceive what actually is going on. You know, you never actually know. We never know.
Yeah.
But what I love about things is that you can still get away with most things. That's what I love about society, despite all the cameras and everything else. There's still a lot of things. People can still empower themselves and get away with a lot, you know, despite the fact that, like, you know, I mean, so many millions of people on the planet, you know, they can't control. I mean, you have a camera to control every single person, which means someone's got to watch that camera to watch every single person, and they've got to agree with what's going on.
So it's almost like the system they've created is, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's like designed to fail almost, because there's this thing within us that either will rebel, or these systems they're trying to do, the more they try and control it and squeeze us, the more that things are popping out.
Designed to fail. I mean, they have to have, like, I suppose, like, you know, for the whole chaos to kind of continue, like, it has to be, you know, you can't just all function with, like, you know, without any things kind of to you know, go against the way things should be. I suppose those are, you know, if you really want to get conspiracist about it, they've programmed the whole thing so that, like, you know, it all just, like, you know, bounces back, so no one ever attains enough power, or the weaknesses are still controlled through whatever. But that gets, you know, gets a bit far-fetched, Matrix kind of territory, like, you know.
But who knows? I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier, is that how we were, from where we're born, we would have naturally this love for ourselves, and on a soul level we're connected, but they try and make us weaker by playing on our weaknesses and bringing them out to the fore, if you like. So that's kind of what it kind of keeps it going, I guess.
I don't know.
But hopefully this is what is now changing because of you know, this change is happening.
Well, the thing is, it's always good because the thing is, you know, one thing I always remember about punk was, like, there was always the system. Like, whatever you did, you were fighting the system, like whatever that was, in its, you know, the man, the power, the whatever, but never actually defined who that group of people are that actually have all that power. And, there's all the conspiracy theories about
it's, like, them, you know, the elusive they people.
Yeah, and it's the Knights Templar or whatever, like other people, like, you know, that held the power of like across the world for all this time. But, you know, do they exist? Is that really what's happening? Do the people if that's the case, then do the people that actually we're fighting against, say the politicians that you rail against every day, or the capitalist corporations, are they really the people that have the power? Who has the power, you know? At the end of the day, like, is there actually a power base, or is it just a lot of chaos?
Or an illusion or something as well? I mean, again, back to the politicians, maybe there's another way to look at it, that maybe then a lot more participation needs to happen, that, you know, we complain about the politicians and the way the politics is, but perhaps that we need to have you know, if we don't like it, we need to have a bit bigger say in it. Maybe this
comes down to, I mean, the joke in this country is that we live in a democracy. How can we live in a democracy when there's only two parties you can vote for?
Yeah, that's right.
That's not a democracy. It's like 1984 with the Eurasia and Thingy War. You know, they just keep changing it round. Oh, like, we're at war with this person. No, they're back at war with this. We're, like, voting for two parties. They're exactly the same as each other. One slightly better than the other in terms of, like, it's more socialist in a sense of, like, it's made more progress with making things better for people. Of course, that's a good thing. But it's about egos. You're voting for somebody's ego. You're voting for, like, this politician's ego versus this politician's ego. You're voting for a bunch of policies that don't add up, for a start. I mean, just because you vote Labour, do you agree with everything that Labour does? Of course you don't. Can that whole party represent one way of thinking? No, of course they can't.
Because also the individual politician might have, you know, his own beliefs, but he has to toe a party line as well.
I mean, the whole thing is bizarre. It's absurd. You know, the whole thing is absurd. I mean, you've got to vote. You go and vote for two things that are the same. You know, we're not like voting for something completely new way of looking at the way we deal with the world. We're just voting for one thing that deals with it in this way, and then about half an inch to the other way, we're dealing with a party that deals with it that way, which basically pretty much the same. In fact, right now we have two parties sharing power of completely, supposedly different ways of thinking, but we're still living in the same. Yeah, you know, they're still making the same laws.
Yeah, it's like that old Bill Hicks thing that, you know, who do you vote for, the puppet on the left or the puppet on the right?
Yeah, I mean, but is there a choice? I don't think there is. I remember, like, deciding I was going to vote Green one year, and, like, I actually was going to vote. It's the first time I was going to vote because I didn't vote for years. But as an anarchist, I thought it was not appropriate. But, like, you know, even, you know, with my anarchist views have changed now, and I'm open to any party lines, including anarchism. That's just as much a die-hard, got to do it like this, otherwise you're out kind of way. You've got to look outside the box. But I remember thinking I was going to vote Green. I remember Labour or someone knocking on the door. I said, "What do you mean you're going to vote Green? That's a wasted vote." And it was just like, but how dare you say that to me?
That shows you that so democracy is a lie. If that politician or that person wants to be a politician thinks it's a wasted vote.
Yeah, well, of course it is a wasted vote because everyone's just going to vote Tory and Labour. But I mean, I was to come back to this thing like voting on issues. There should be a lot more like just issue voting. Why don't we have 10 elections a year where the main issues are represented? People come out and vote for them, and the politicians do what civil servants do in every other job. They implement the will of the people.
Yeah.
But you can't have that because the issues are not readily explained to people because you've got the press which inflates and
because they're in the same game. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So, but I mean, if you could do it, where you could actually say, right, okay, we're having there's 10 big issues. Like, we're going to pull out of Afghanistan. We're going to do this, whatever the biggest things are in the main, the economic stuff. We're going to be in Europe. You have referendums on those subjects, and they're always complaining not enough people are going out to vote. Well, why is that? What point is there? Like, you go out and actually vote for these things, and the politicians, instead of being egotistical maniacs who decide what they're going to do themselves, like Tony Blair and people like that, who just went off and did whatever he felt was he fancied because he'd been voted in. Just they actually work like the people that collect the rubbish and everybody else works to make the system work. They're good at politics. They're good at representing, serving us, and go and do what the people have voted for. Yeah,
and that's a good idea because one thing my friend Peter said, we have lots of conversations like this, and he says that if again about participation, if you disagree with them rather than sort of saying you hate them and don't participate, you want to write to them and tell them how you feel about things. Yeah. But that again, that they might not listen, or they have their own agenda, or their ego. But that situation might be a better alternative because then
you can do that. You can go to Parliament and you can write to your MP and even go and see him. I think, but again, for one person to deal with thousands of other people's small issues,
that's what
and then have to then represent that to a house of people, other politicians, and then we've got to vote on the issues. If the issue ever even gets anywhere in the first place, it just becomes lost in the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, it's not much of a democracy, really, is it?
No, I mean, Tony Benn was always a champion of it, but in the end, he felt like he saw the cracks in how it was working, and which is a shame.
So yeah, I'm getting my phone is buzzing away here. I've not looked at it.
But shall we, in the meantime, play another song? We're getting towards, we've gone to 10 to 1 now. Should we sort of
wrap it up?
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking of, I don't know, maybe an old...
Live, again, back here on Phoenix FM, a live music selection.
Yeah, you go, this is a real DJ.
Wonderful. But I'm glad that you're come to join us here, Chris. I really enjoyed the show and this sort of random continuation.
I'll tell you what we should play. We should play this.
Okay.
Second track on there. That's a good. That's a punk acid techno track.
Oh, it combines it. Beautiful. Second song. Yeah.
Just in case everyone thinks we've given up on electronic music in this show,
So who is this?
This is me and Sterling Moss, but more importantly, the title's called "Sick of Capitalism. Want my money back."
Perfect.
Sick of capitalism. Want my money back. Profit. Greed. Profit. Greed. Profit. Greed. Profit. Greed. Profit. Greed. Profit. Greed.
Again, another wonderful song from Chris Liberator.
And Sterling Moss.
And Sterling Moss, wonderful. Yeah, don't forget that bit. But yes, this is Musical Meanderings. My name's Graham Stannard. I'm glad that people are still tuned in. A lot of people still listening on the and watching on the chat room on the Phoenix FM website and listening on the streaming. And hopefully many people listening as well around Brentwood and Billericay and the surrounding areas in Essex. I'm here every Tuesday evening from 10 o'clock. With Musical Meanderings. Every week there's a couple of slight variations in the show. Next week I've got Yinka Oyole on with his latest music, and he's been in Sabata, and he's been making new songs, and he's been making videos for them as well. So he's been releasing them from now, really. So I know he's got a gig as well the following weekend, so we'll be talking about that. And again, he's always have great conversations with him as well, so I'm looking forward to that and seeing how long that goes on for. But it's been great that you've been able to join me tonight here, Chris, and coming out to Essex.
I really enjoyed it, Graham. It's been really like a fantastic experience, actually. I didn't expect it to be quite as good as this. I thought it was going to be a straight, like, what's been going on, like the parties, what's going on with Stay It Forever, and it's been a very fresh approach to having a chat, and I really, really enjoyed it. You are great to chat to. Thank you very much indeed.
Like, so are you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. So
yeah, thanks for sharing so much as well, and talking is good to hear about the history as well, because it sort of resonates with me so much with my sort of history in the kind of rave and this music scene as well. So it's been a nice education for me. So I've really appreciated it.
It's really great. Well, I really hope the show continues to be successful, and it's really good because you've got a really good thing going on here, obviously. So thank you very much for having me, and just want to do a big shout out to all the crew across the world, everyone. Getting some text through now. I've actually looked at my phone. Patrick DSP and my beautiful wife Carmel, and various other people. Wayne, a load of other people that have been listening in. I hope you enjoyed it as well, as much as for us. And long live the struggle.
Absolutely, we'll keep it going, and lots to look forward to. I think that there'll be a struggle, but lots of people doing wonderful things within themselves and the community, so that'll be a continuing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So yes, this is a Phoenix FM, and don't forget to check out my show page, Musical Meanderings, on there as well, where you can listen to previous shows and check out the track listings as well, and a little bit of a blog, and so then you'll be able to check out what went on this show, and hopefully I'll keep on top of the track listings and all the music we played here.
Yeah, so I hope people enjoyed the music, something different to just techno. I know there's a bit of techno in there and a few other bits and bobs, but so always good to check out other kinds of music, and it's a shame. What we should have done is played a few of the psytrance things that you've been into, because I keep hearing bits and people. Everyone keeps telling me psytrance gone really techno in the last couple of years.
Well, I did start the show on psytrance, so
right. I wasn't listening because I couldn't get it when I left down at home, so I just put a tape on.
Maybe we'll share a bit more, and every week I kind of play a bit anyway. So. There'll be a bit more of that. But thank you, Chris Liberator, for joining me here on Musical Meanderings.
Thank you, Graham. Very, very, very honoured to be on the show. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And this is Phoenix FM, and it'll be continuing.